You're listening to The Breakfast Show here on Faith FM. Coming up, we are going to be diving deep, headfirst into, well, what you've heard on the news, on the cycle, what's been happening down in Sydney, in Bondi. Yeah, trying to make sense of it, trying to make heads or tails and seeing what we can glean and what we can understand from it.
And our hearts go out to, I'm sure all of us have been affected in some way. Watching or hearing about it is distressing, but, you know, there's some that are more affected than others. Our hearts go out to you. Absolutely.
Hey, we're also going to be, in our second hour, picking up a Bible study, continuing in the book of Joshua and kind of coming to a wrap-up point with that one. But Dan, hey, what are you going to be sharing with us?
I've got some good news.
Okay.
In this world of craziness, there is some good news.
I'm keen to hear it.
That is what happens after you die, which that's a bit weird that there's good news for what happens after you die. But there is.
All right. Hey, I'm ready to be comforted with these words. But before we jump into that, let's get another quiz question. Please produce Shell.
Our third one for today. Why were the Israelites afraid to approach Moses after he came down from Mount Sinai? Why were the Israelites afraid to approach Moses after he came down from Mount Sinai? We've got two correct answers in the studio. Well done to the guys. 0491064669 for you to also text in what you think that answer is. One more time. Why were the Israelites afraid to approach Moses after he came down from Mount Sinai?
Hey, is that usually how you pronounce that word? Sinai?
Yeah, that's how I always say it.
That's how I say it too, and I'm not American.
You say Sinai?
Sinai.
No,
Sinai.
Well, I usually say it's like one. That kind of adds a syllable, right? Like Sinai.
Not cyanide, no.
I say Sinai. Yeah.
It's probably more phonetic, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know. Hey, how do you say it? 0491.
Text us how you say it.
An extra A.
And put it in that word format, you know, like when you look in the dictionary and then you have like how it's sounded and it's some jumble of letters that, you know, I don't know, there's some kind of like phonetic alphabet, I guess, which is cool. I've had nothing to do with that. I don't really know how it works, but yeah. Hey, if you know anything about it, send it through 0491 064
Or just copy and paste it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Dan, what is the good news about dying?
Yeah, so there is this American actor come evangelical leader, Kirk Cameron.
Sure.
That has come out and he has said that, and he's not come out 100% convinced of this, but he's come out provisionally to say that he doesn't agree with this idea that that the wicked are eternally tormented in hell.
Really?
Which is the predominant view of most Christians around the world. That the wicked once they die immediately go to hell, and they are there for eternity. Mm-hmm. And he has come out saying, "No, I'm coming around to the annihilationist view."
Okay. Why?
Annihilationalism. That's a weird word, but annihilationists believe that when God gives his final reward to the wicked, their eternal destiny is not being at all, not existing.
Yeah.
Hence annihilation. They are annihilated. They are finished. They're done.
Essentially the opposite of eternal life.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is eternal death.
Which on that point, I have to say, the most famous verse in the Bible is very strongly in favour of annihilationism.
Yeah.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, as in be annihilated, but have everlasting life. If you're a believer in eternal conscious torment in hell, you would read that verse saying, for God so loved that he gave, that whoever believes in him should not live eternally in hell, but live eternally.
Yeah.
Like what? It's not even described how the positive side of that is. It's just you're going to live forever, as opposed to living forever in hell. What sort of a deal is that? Like, am I going to live forever watching the guys in hell? Am I going to be in hell with them? Am I going to it's such a a meaningless verse unless you're an annihilationist. And it's become the most famous verse in the Bible, but people kind of miss that.
Yeah, 100%. And we also have to highlight there, I mean, from a logical standpoint, some people could say, oh, but, he's talking about like a general perishing, but it's like, hey, we all die.
In the process of perishing for eternity.
We all die. Clearly it's not talking about perishing, in our life, our mortal life on this earth, because everyone dies, but it's saying you shall not perish. So what kind of perishing is it speaking to? And yeah, that perishing is a total and utter perishing, a complete perishedness for eternity. So we here on The Breakfast Show support the view of annihilationism, or the idea that the wicked are destroyed for eternity, forever. They're completely destroyed. This is the opposite of receiving the fruits of eternal life. And so what's made Kirk Cameron come around on this?
So he was always uneasy with this idea of eternal torment. And so he's studied the Bible. There's a few theologians that are also annihilationists.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. There's an apologist, Wesley Huff, that's come out to say that this position it might be unorthodox. It's not the way that most of Christianity think, but it's not heresy. If you're going to call it heresy, you would have to be calling out a bunch of prominent people that have a similar view, including John Stott, a famous theologian. He was probably regarded as the most prominent theologian of much of the 20th century. And he also was an annihilationist. So to come out and say that, these guys that, reject this eternal torment are just preaching heresy is, according to these guys, they may not agree, but it's actually, they're in some good company. And I think they're in good company. We also believe that eternal torment is just not a thing. It is a terrible reflection on the character of God if he was to be, you and I might reject him. And we might have caused a bit of pain and suffering to other people, which we have. Like, we haven't rejected God, but we have caused a bit of pain and suffering to other people. Would it be fair for God to just eternally torment me for I've given a bit of torment to other people around. My family can attest to that.
Yeah.
But have I tormented them eternally?
Yeah.
Like, is there any sense of fairness?
Yeah, that's right. An eternal punishment an eternal punishing, because at the end of the day, annihilationism is an eternal punishment that lasts forever. But an eternal torment for something that was temporal and very much limited, it doesn't add up. It doesn't matter. How can someone's consequences for their actions that they committed in a, short life, even terrible, and even, and I'm thinking of the worst of the worst, people bring up, the Hitler, the Pol Pot, the Joseph Stalin, whoever it may be. Like, still, there is a very limited sense and nature of their crimes. Why would they be eternally, and continually tormented and punished for something that they did on compared to eternity, quite a small scale?
Yeah, even Hitler tormenting for eternity is unfair. Like, as hard as it is for me to say that, it's unfair to just eternally, forever and ever, torment somebody who's maybe killed several million people. But to have them just going through not just several million life sentences of hard labour in a prison camp, but once you've done several million life sentences, give them another several million, and then another for eternity. Like, that's just ridiculous. So that's why Kirk Cameron has come around on this point, and he's receiving a fair bit of publicity about this because he's a prominent guy, which is interesting because there's two prominent Kirks, and our producer Shell has something to say about this name of Kirk.
Well, she does. I think she's a bit distracted right now, but
we can spoil it and give away her. Oh no, she's going to share it.
She's put the headphones on.
So Charlie Kirk has come out and written a book that is positive about the Sabbath.
Okay.
Which is something that we here at Faith FM also we're in a minority of the Christian world, but we fervently believe in and promote the Sabbath as a day of rest that still is a gift and a blessing for God's people. And so you've got Charlie Kirk promoting the Sabbath through his book. We don't necessarily agree with everything that Charlie Kirk's book is about, or Kirk Cameron and what he teaches, but Kirk Cameron has come out about the state of the dead. Producer Shell, what's your Easter egg?
My Easter egg. Well, I think that like the two major deceptions at the end time are those two.
Yes, yeah.
Against the Sabbath and against the state of the dead, spiritualism, and that sort of thing. And I just find it interesting that just within a couple of days, because Charlie Kirk's book came out on the 9th, and then this Kirk Cameron thing, I think, happened like on the 9th or the 10th or someplace like that as well. And it's both the big stories that are hit at the moment. And that they've got truth mixed with a little bit of error. I think that Kirk Cameron's one, I mean, he's finding the truth to the matter for sure. But it's interesting that both of them have the name Kirk, and so you got Charlie Kirk Cameron. But anyways, Kirk means church. Yeah, and those are the two deceptions that are going to attack the church at the end times.
Yeah, right. And they've uncovered the truth on the flip side of that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. We just got a text message through from Chris. She asked, "Who is Kirk Cameron?" I mean, to sum it up, the guy was
very famous in the 80s.
Yeah,
in
famous.
A TV,
he's like a child actor.
Yeah, TV show actor, and then it became famous again during the Left Behind movie series. He was the main character in all of the Left Behind movies, and that was after he'd already become a Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's now a major podcaster and a pastor, and very, very influential.
Yes.
And he's married to an actress as well. So they're power family, power couple.
Yeah, so I think this is cool from the perspective of, hey, some really prominent people are coming to this unpopular position, but one of biblical truth that is just so clear and obvious. Hey, God doesn't burn people in hell for eternity. He gives them a just end for a wicked life.
But there is justice. And so, thinking about our story for today in Bondi, and we can come back to this soon, but there is justice, but it's not overkill.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. Hey, we'll jump straight back into it.
You're listening to The Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
We have producer Shell telling us all about
answers to
quiz
your
answer. Yeah.
Bible questions. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Bible quiz questions, anyway. I can't do the other ones. We'll leave that for my husband, Lyle. Why were the Israelites afraid to approach Moses after he came down from Mount Sinai? I think I said it right. Valmay sent through the pronunciation. Thank you for that, Valmay. And it was because his face shone brightly. It was shining so bright that it freaked them out, I guess.
Yeah. Hectic stuff. And look,
he had been in the presence of God.
Yeah, he had. And I think this is what we're needing right now. Some time in God's presence, some time in his word. Just got a text message through from Sherry on the text line. She says, well, firstly, the answer to the quiz question, his face was glowing brightly. But then she says, well, firstly, she says here, Lawson, I'll miss you. And of course, in reference to my heading off at the end of the year, finishing up here on the Breakfast Show. She says,
this is your last week on radio?
This is my last week on radio. At least full time anyway, permanent. I'll be joining. I'll get phone calls from Shell and Skafy and just like you do, just like you do, Dan. But hey, she goes on to write. She says,
I think I'm going to get fewer phone calls now.
Yeah. Maybe that'll hit me. But maybe if I say no enough times, then that'll go back to calling you. Hey, the text message continues on here. It says, hey, listen so long to your voice and your growth. Bless you and thank you. I'm turning off now as I've heard enough of the very sad Bondi situation. Have a blessed day. And hey, Sherry, we're right there with you. We are going to jump into the Bondi situation and hey, if this is, something that's a bit too much to handle right now, we're right here with you and praying that God will be with you and give you comfort during this time. And this is what everyone is needing. Now, of course, we are talking about and referencing what either you heard about last night just before you went to bed or what you woke up with this morning, that one of the worst mass shootings since the Port Arthur mass shooting in the 90s has been perpetrated in the middle of Bondi, well, on Bondi Beach. Of course, this terrible mass shooting, and what has come out is that the death toll just in the last hour has risen to 16. The injured rate has risen to 38 people as well, 38 injured. Now, there are massive questions about, why did this happen? Why is this happening in general? And this is something that I really came to learn about and experience kind of real time. So last night, what happened was the opening of fire begun around 6:45. They began shooting, and I think it's 6:55, my family group chat got a text from my little sister who lives about 5 streets away from Bondi Beach, so probably a kilometer up the road or so. We started getting texts from her like, hey, there's a mass shooting happening in Bondi right now. I'm at home, but my friends have been sending me, and they had been sending through to her some info, some pictures or some video of what's going on, people running down the beach. And she starts saying, hey, look, there's a mass shooting happening by this point when she started texting us, I think, the heroic video that many people have seen of the guy wrestling the gun out of the gunman's hands. That had already happened. I believe the shooting had stopped by then, by that time. It had only been about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes of shooting itself. But yeah, we're getting texts from my sister. And so I open up Reddit, go to, Sydney, sort by newest. And then I was just getting the latest updates from the ground of what was happening there at Bondi. Of course, I wasn't on the scene, but just seeing what people are saying. And this is when people started to say, hey, and considering really, why is this happening? What is going on here? Now, the extra details that were being enlightened upon almost immediately and now have come out in the media that on this particular day, Bondi there was a particular Jewish group having a Hanukkah celebration, a festival. And by festival, they were, there, having a party on the pavilion, selling sausages and sweets to people who were coming by, interacting and having their first day of, celebrating the first day of Hanukkah, essentially, which made it so, I think, real for me when I started reading that. It reminded me of, let's say, what, Dan goes to my church, what we do when we do, we worship on the university campus when we have what we call outreach lunches, where we set up in the middle of the campus and invite all the people to come and eat with us and have a big meal with tons of people. Essentially that, these people are in the middle of a public place, celebrating their faith and providing for the community. This is where they're at. And it's, they're it's a family friendly event. A bunch of people are there with their families and babies in the pram, kids are, playing in the park, all this kind of thing. And that was the time at which the two perpetrators took their position on the pavilion there on a bridge and opened fire. And that was a really, thing that my sister was sending through was, hey, I've literally walked the bridge where they started opening fire down into the crowd. She was like, yeah, I walked that like an hour ago. Like I walked over that bridge an hour ago. And so my sister was quite shaken up, and of course we're sending support and love to her. But I say all this to say that immediately this looked like not the work of, a crazed individual struggling with mental health or wanting to be a notorious mass shooter. Those two examples, I'm thinking
Martin Bryant.
That's right. Martin Bryant, of course, the, Port Arthur shooting, or even what we saw in Bondi Junction with the mass stabbing, which was, a really terrible mental health event. Because there was a specific target almost initially of Jewish people, straight away it was like, hey, this has a terrorist feel and flavor to it. A terrorist feel and flavor. And it was interesting because I was on Reddit, like just sitting there watching the updates come through, people sharing, oh, I'm here, I saw this, da-da-da. And when people started saying, hey, like these two guys opened fire on a Hanukkah festival, this seems like a terrorist attack, like an anti-Semitic, anti-Israel terrorist attack. There were people replying like immediately saying, oh, we can't say that yet. That's harmful information. If it's misinformation, like don't say something like that. And people are like responding underneath like, no, we're there. Like we were there at the Hanukkah festival. Like that's what they were shooting into. These are two men standing at a vantage point, one with a rifle, the other with an over-under shotgun, and shooting at specific targets in a specific place. Like it very much seems like this is, you can't just, we're not going to like wash this and say that it's not, when it very much seems like it is. And now, what has come out in the media, and particularly with Anthony Albanese's statement or whatnot, they're hailing this to be an anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-Jew terrorist attack. That's the consensus now. But initially there was some
caution.
There was some caution,
and that kind of does make sense. But caution seems to be often overly steered in one direction.
Yeah, and the question is, because the next question comes, which is like, okay, well, why are they attacking Jews? Like, why is this specifically targeted attack happening? I was thinking like, hey, like if they're wanting to get everyone, like if there wasn't a specific racial target, well, firstly, you don't need to be in Bondi. That's, the other aspect of it is that Bondi has the heaviest concentration of Jews in Australia living in one location. Secondly, you wouldn't need to like wait to the day of Hanukkah opening and then specifically target these people. You could have targeted other people. You could have, shot the other direction. You could have gone into the shopping center. Like there's so many places where you could have been to perpetrate this attack, but it was specifically in this place. So, and now that information is coming out, they've made arrest of multiple individuals. They captured the gunman straight away. One of them have died. The other one is in custody. They've now made multiple arrests, which straight away gives hints of conspiracy, organization.
Yeah, there's an element of organization to what's behind this. There's more than just two people, two gunmen, creating mayhem. There's
right.
A whole heap of organized system behind it.
That's right. The rumor, I haven't been able to verify this. Some news sites or some fringe news sites are reporting this because we have a clear picture of the gunman that is alive, and people have been saying, oh, they've found out that he's an Afghan national, so from Afghanistan, and is here in Australia on a refugee visa, which is very interesting. But because of this, people have begun speculating. Okay, for what reason, for what movement would someone organize in this way to kill and to attack Jewish people? Why would they do this? And furthermore, the next question is, what kind of solace can we find in the Bible, in God's word?
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
This morning you got myself, Lawson, and Dr. Dan on the Breakfast Show, on the mic. joining us, as well as usual, producer Shell, getting it done. Now, picking up, we were chatting about, of course, the Bondi shooting and, the events that unfolded there. And the question that we left off with before that song by Sandra Enterman, the question that we finished on was, well, why? What kind of movement would these terrible terrorist attack, this mass shooting in the middle of Bondi against specifically Jewish people, targeted at Jewish people, and there were other casualties of other races and faiths as well, but specifically targeted at a Jewish event, Hanukkah by the Sea. Why would this happen? For what movement and for what reason would this happen? And ultimately, this is or has been the escalation of anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic attacks that have already been happening over the last couple of years, especially so since October 7th, 2023. Now,
the attack that happened in Israel.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, for those who need a refresher on the history, October 7th, 2023, Hamas, which is the terrorist organization who, represents or has been fighting for the Palestinians on the Gaza Strip. They, on October 7th committed, a big act of terrorism, went through the streets shooting Jewish people and shooting and bombing and kidnapping and doing all these things. And then this is what started the current conflict that's continued through to this day. Now, this situation in Bondi, to me, reads like ultimately the Hamas textbook, which is to commit heinous acts of terror to complete the goal and the objective of Hamas, which is to destroy Israel, and to eradicate Jewish people for the purpose of taking the land, establishing themselves in the land and whatnot. Now, what we've seen in Australia since October 7th is, a heightened amount of vandalism against synagogues. We've seen stories like this basically every week for the last at least 6, 8, 10 months. It's just been increasing and increasing. Vandalism against synagogues. We saw some firebombing of cars of, prominent Jewish leaders in Australia. We also, saw attacks specifically on Jewish people, and then this has escalated now into a mass shooting, a mass casualty event happening on Bondi Beach,
which doesn't make a lot of sense in terms of the justifiable, semi-justifiable objectives of the Palestinian people, and that is to, from their point of view, protect their territory.
Sure.
Is Bondi part of Palestine? What's going on there? How does that connect with the objectives of Hamas? And that there seems to be some. So we don't know who perpetrated this. What happened yesterday in Bondi yet? It may not be connected to Hamas, but what we're observing is that there's this movement of anti-Semitism, and it's connected with the movement in Hamas. With the Hamas, operatives. We don't know to what extent that's involved here, but we're just trying to put the pieces together.
Look, from my point of view, and I might be bold in saying this, but the terrorist attack that was orchestrated yesterday is like the Hamas playbook. If these people weren't directly sponsored by Hamas, they were at least following their example. And again, this crime committed perpetrated against Jews by other Middle Eastern people is in this day and age expressly for the reason of freeing Palestine. Like there's in this day and age there's few other reasons to be anti-Semitic in that kind of way other than for that specific movement, which is the free Palestine, free Gaza, not just the free Palestine, free Gaza, but the destruction of Israel.
And there's so many other motivations or narratives around anti-Semitism, like Hitler and the Nazi movement had nothing to do with freeing Palestine.
Yeah, that's right.
So anti-Semitism has some multiple facets and angles, and yeah, we can't just, pin all anti-Semitism on Hamas.
Yeah.
But there is a playbook here that
Yeah.
that this seems consistent with.
That's right. That's right. That's actually a really good point, is that typically, like, in Nazism, it's usually been like the playbook for Nazism has been to rise up a movement that takes control of the government and that kind of thing. In this particular case, or in Hamas's case, it's, mate, get the guns out. Like, it's, commit acts of terrorism to get the message across and to further the movement there. And that's exactly what we've seen in Bondi. Now, the question is, what made someone feel emboldened enough and empowered enough and a necessity to do this in Australia? Maybe we'll never know the answer to that, or we do have one of the shooters in custody, and I hope the police are doing their best to get answers out of this guy. And I really hope this guy repents and confesses his sins, and he realizes that he's up the garden path, and he needs God to change his heart and his life. Like, this is what we need to pray for. I hope this person receives the just consequences for their actions, but simultaneously that, I'd love to hear the story that, this person who, when they got sentenced and went to jail, that, or even on the stand, that they could, stand there and say, hey, look, I'm going to take the consequences for my actions, but also I disavow the movement that I tried to represent, and it's not worth it. And, hey, there's something better than committing heinous acts of terrorism. Like, there's something better than that. And, hopefully that person could even testify of Jesus. That would be incredible. We don't know if that's going to happen, but that's definitely something that we need to pray for. And hopefully through that, it would dissuade other would-be terrorists like this from doing something like this. Now, we come again to the question of, what would embolden someone to do this? And I'm going to say something bold again, which is that, when 100,000 people were marching across the Sydney Harbour Bridge, chanting "From the river to the sea," from the river to the sea.
And so this is Aussies. This is just typical, inner city,
socially conscious people. The majority of these people, right?
Yeah, and feeling like they have a righteous cause that they are advocating for. They are seeing the violence committed by Israel towards Palestinians, thinking, man, this is just so unjust. We need to get out there and support. And that is to some extent understandable. But when they're chanting what you just said, from the river to the sea, there is some deep meaning there that may be lost. That's right.
This is something that we've talked about on The Breakfast Show, which is that, again, from the perspective of the people that went to those protests and whatever it may be, like especially here at Faith FM, we are not Zionists, even theologically, biblically. We don't support the modern state of Israel. We have no ties to it. We're not into it.
We're not picking a side here. There's not prophetic significance to this, this conflict.
Yeah.
And there is to some extent in that, it's part of the world going crazy, but there's not
prophetic evil. Yeah.
Yeah. There's not a particular side that is
that's right,
ordained in prophecy to have a particular outcome.
That's right. But with people that were good-meaninged and I'm sure well-intentioned, but chanting "From the river to the sea," which has been co-opted by Hamas, and this is public knowledge and information. This is essentially the Hamas chant of what that means to Hamas is destroy Israel, eradicate the Jews. 100,000 Aussies walking across the Harbour Bridge chanting "From the river to the sea." Could potentially be emboldening for someone to make them feel like, oh, look, like I've got the popular vote here. We've got the local support. Like, these people are for the movement of destroying the Jews.
So from the river being the Jordan River, I'm guessing, and the sea being the Mediterranean.
The Mediterranean,
sea.
yeah.
And that chant meaning not only we're going to reclaim the land, but we're going to eradicate the people in our way.
That's right. It's a call to complete and utter eradication. This was being chanted from the Sydney Harbour Bridge, like an explicit call to violence, and how that violence was being perpetrated by Hamas is terrorism. Like these styles of mass shootings and mass killings. We've seen it happen here in Bondi. Now, am I saying, is it like the fault of all these people? Is it the fault of Aussies? No, like what we saw in Bondi was actually amazing, heroic acts of love and self-sacrifice and courage. That's what unfolded in Bondi. Like, and what we see there is, we could say the Aussie spirit, the Aussie message, on the mantra of mateship and love. But I think also, as well as, we know that true love comes from God. We know that true self-sacrifice comes from Jesus as well. And I think that's the positive to take from this, if there was any, is that despite living in a world with really crazy, conflicted, complicated, and terrible, heinous violence, that still God can shine his light through people. He can work in the hearts of people in such tragedy like this. And also, despite, reading here in 1 Timothy chapter 3, but understand this, the last days will be perilous or difficult. People will be lovers of self, unholy and heartless, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. We see Matthew 24 and verse 12 as well, because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. It'll be interesting to see, what the government response is after this, if there's any legislative responses, the information about the shooters, their agenda, all of this stuff is, still needing to come out. But the Bible, God knows this was going to happen. God isn't caught unawares of this. He knows that terrible violence would be perpetrated for the cause of evil. And he also gets the last laugh. Speaking of, again, these movements in this land, when we jump into the book of Revelation, we read about the New Jerusalem, which is actually the Zion that we want to be in, the one that Jesus sets up after his second coming. It says this: its gates shall not be shut at all by day, and they shall bring the glory and the honor of nations into it. But there shall be by no means nothing shall enter it that defiles or causes an abomination or a lie, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. Essentially what the Bible is saying here is that God's kingdom for eternity, nothing will enter it like this. Nothing will come into its perfect peace and disturb it. No lie, no abomination, no violence that we've seen orchestrated, coming into Bondi and just such a disruption, such a, heart-wrenching, awful act of violence. Nothing will be perpetrated like this against the kingdom of heaven, against the New Jerusalem, where we will be living for eternity. We look forward to peace. And in Matthew 24 and verse 14, it says, hey, enjoy to the end. Enjoy to the end.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.